Mrs. Runbeck, what can we expect to see?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Charlie mentioned forest fragmentation, and you might want to become familiar with a concept or an effort called Heart of the Continent Partnership. It is many different nonprofit groups focusing on 5 million acres of land in northern Minnesota, which would include the Superior National Forest, Voyageurs National Park, and up on into Quetico. But the intent there, and it would, it's going to take land that is currently being forested, that looks very much like it would take this 5 million acres and hope to make it some kind of a wilderness very similar to the Voyageurs National Park. So I think a lot of the, I'll call them elites, a lot of the elites figure that northern Minnesota should be a playground for folks that live in the cities and just want to go up for a weekend and see beauty. But my gosh, there are people up there who've made a living for, 4 generations, and these kind of efforts have smitten right at the heart of people who actually are trying to make their living off the land, out of forestry and mining, agriculture, and so on. So, yeah, buying land. The state of Minnesota could very well spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying land and bidding it up in price from the market. So it's not going to be subject to market forces. All right. So they'll be the highest bidder. How much land do we think Minnesota should actually own and keep off of the rolls? What does it mean for private property owners? I mean, frankly, they aren't talking about this at all, and that's why it is a pig in a poke. We have no idea what's in store. I can guarantee you a lot of folks are completely clueless about it.
Mr. Poster, Mr. Runbeck says that this proposed amendment will disenfranchise people in northern Minnesota. You have 1 minute.
Well, we've got great support in northern Minnesota. I mean, the largest landowners there, Boise Products, who are selling some of these, think that it would be a good idea to make sure that these are held in the public land. They've been open while they're in private ownership. Boise and a few of the very large owners have always been open to the public for both to be working forest, to create forest products, but also for hunting, bird watching, hiking. And so I think northern Minnesotans have always, and I'm from northern Minnesota, so I think we've always really appreciated the land. So I think that this is going to keep the land open for public consumption. I would say that Missouri, to kind of go about how much land should the state really own, that is a good question. And in Missouri, I think they've hit their limit of how much land is publicly held. But now every year they still have these funds coming in. They have to try and do something with it. I think that's why the state of Minnesota did a good thing by making this a 25-year bill. Let's stop, see where we're at. Has the state really saturated how much land they can purchase, or do we want more? So there is a stop point where we can see how we're doing.
Mr. Runbeck, 1 minute to rebut anything that Mr. Poster said, or we can move on.
Well, as I say, this is a very complicated area, and I'm going to say this about people in my party that for 20 years in the federal government and the state government have thought that if they just said yes to a few things that the environmental activists want, then they would be satisfied and they would go away. But frankly, what we're seeing is an incredible sort of taking of private interests, the denial to, of course, use land for mineral rights, for mining, for energy. We're not able to drill in certain parts of our country because those lands have been put off limits. The same will happen to our northern Minnesota forest. Nobody will be able to forest there. You watch. Because why? If it's a wilderness, there is no motorized equipment, not even a chainsaw, that can go into that forest and do a thing. So, you invite this and you invite an incredible change in the heart of our land and what has made us strong.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Now we will end with 1.5 minutes by Mr. Poster first, and then Mrs. Runbeck. These are your closing statements.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you learned a little bit. If you have more questions, you of course will stick around. But you can always visit our website at www.yesformn.org. But this is really a good bill for Minnesota, and the senator started off by saying some people who oppose it. We've built one of the largest coalitions in Minnesota history, with over 350 groups. People who really have the state's best interests in mind. It was noted in the paper today that if any politician could bring together the groups that we've brought together under this, they would win in a landslide. They'd be a shoo-in. People from our sporting communities, people from our environmental background, and really these arts groups and people around the state who really care about Minnesota. I think that is basically what this is. This is a bill that's going to invest in a lot of things that make Minnesota special, from our outdoors to our quality of life. And I wouldn't name any of these groups special interests. I think that these are people who care about Minnesota, who really want to see the state move forward, and want to make sure that the same things that we got to enjoy and appreciate growing up are there for tomorrow's future generations. So one last thing I'd leave you with is that if you leave this question blank on your ballot, it's the same as voting no. So when you go into the voting booth in about a week, however you feel, you should make sure that you have your voice heard. Thank you.
Your turn, Mrs. Runbeck.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that people need, when they go into the voting booth, to realize that you've elected state legislators who have not and will not turn their back on environmental needs. And so you have to, I think that's where the responsibility lies. I think the fear in this is the things that we do not know about how the money will be spent. I didn't mention, for example, that the money can be spent on paying citizens and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to actually go onto private land and monitor what is being done there, to make sure that maybe there aren't some unpermitted or non-point source pollution that might be happening. So that's one very interesting use. It is going to be spent to buy up land and remove it from commercial or recreational use, and I think a lot of the sportsmen's organizations are completely naive about that. And the money will be spent, I guarantee you, tens of millions of dollars to sue the state of Minnesota, to sue municipalities across Minnesota, to sue lake associations, to sue individuals, to sue businesses, because somebody in their ideal world thinks that, gee, enough money is not being spent cleaning up a particular lake. And I'll just cite a couple of the newspapers.
You have 10 seconds, please.
Minneapolis Star-Tribune, it gives the likelihood that other worthy causes will line up to try to circumvent the legislative process. St. Paul Pioneer Press, locking in spending to the state constitution reduces the state's ability to respond.
Mrs. Runbeck, thank you. The debate is now over, but you do have the opportunity in your program. There is a voting card. You're not voting for anything in essence, but I would like to know if your opinion has changed through the course of the debate. It is the more word-heavy page insert in your program. You have no obligation to fill it out, but I would like to collect that. Finally, I would like to give thanks to our speakers, Mrs. Runbeck, Mrs. Linda Runbeck, and Mr. Dolly Poster, for coming, for spending their time here, for preparing and being able to speak. I'd like to thank the University of Minnesota facilities also for giving us this nice room and maintaining the building. Finally, I'd like to thank you Watch for hosting this debate and allowing me to speak, as well as the speakers, the real speakers. Thank you.
Should we do question cards?
Yes. Also, 5 minutes. In 5 minutes we will take questions if there are any.